Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today's video we are going to be talking about the pros and cons to spring intake. Now you guys already know I got my cup of coffee and I also got the tea. So if you guys have been rocking with me for this long and you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss any other videos from me, because I got the goods, all right? I got the information for you guys. I got what you need to get you through. Thank you guys so much, by the way, for your feedback and just being involved in my channel. Thank you guys so much for your questions and comments. I truly appreciate it because it just gives me ideas as I'm talking to you guys, and I thoroughly appreciate you guys reaching out to me and asking me questions. I enjoy answering your questions. So if anything, if you need anything, contact me via my Instagram. If you have like long-winded questions, email me and just keep up to date with me and let me know what's going on with you guys. I enjoy listening to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. So I'm going to talk about the pros first because I think pros are good. The cons, I don't really have that many. Actually, I have a couple, but we'll get to it. Pros. First things first, I think that spring intake is the best time for intake because it is a popular season. Everyone has neophyte presentations or probates, depending on the organization you're part of. Everyone has those in the spring. So you can expect it. It's something that you know will happen. Some organizations, they have a what do you call it? They're in cycles. They have a routine. Like we always know they have a line in the spring, or we always know they have a line in February. Like we know these things, okay? And because you know these things, it is a popular time of year. Every organization participates in spring intake unless they got something going on where they can't. You can expect everybody to have spring intake. So if you know that, then you should know the timelines for those organizations, and I'll talk about timelines in a bit. But if you know they have spring intake, follow the signs. Make sure you know when they're doing certain things so that you'll know when to participate in their intake if you know they have a particular line in the spring. Typically with organizations, which brings me to my next thing, with organizations who have fall or with organizations who have spring intake, they're looking at a timeline between January to April or like February to May. It depends on the organization, but if you know that everyone has a show in April, then you know they're having spring intake sometime before January or sometime before February. Like you know that, so make sure you pay attention to that. The other pro of having intake in the spring is that it gives you more time to prepare, which more time to prepare for spring intake. If you missed your opportunity in the fall, spring will be your opportunity to try again. And if you know that you can try again in the spring, use that time to build your resume, to save money, to get your recommendation letters in order, to get community service hours. Just use that time so that you're prepared for intake when they have it in the spring. Typically in the spring, they'll still have a formal and then an informal. So the informal is an interest meeting. So make sure that you're prepared by the interest meeting so that you'll be invited to formal. Use your time wisely. The third reason that I think that spring intake is advantageous is because it's good for transfer students. I've had a lot of girls, when I was an advisor, want to join when they are first semester freshmen, and with my organization we take second semester freshmen. So that's the earliest time that you can join our sorority. The issue with that is if you're a second semester freshman and you're just transferred in, we're not going to look at your transferred hours or your transferred GPA. We'll look at the hours. We won't look at your transferred GPA. We're looking solely at the host institution's credits and GPA. So if you're a transfer student and you're trying to participate in fall intake, you're not going to be able to participate because they want those host institution hours, and the minimum is usually 12, which is 4 classes depending on what university you're at. So you can't join if you're a transfer student and it's your first semester at the college. They want you to be there for at least 12 credit hours, so for at least 1 semester before you're interested in participating in an organization. I can't really explain to you why that is. That's just been a lot of the sororities' requirements when you're interested in joining. They want your host institution hours. They want your host institution's GPA. I think it's because of the chapter that you're joining. They want your GPA to be accurate according to the host institution that you're joining. I could be wrong, but that's just my interpretation of that. I could be wrong. Let me know. If you guys know better, let me know. That's just my interpretation. But transfer students, they get a better advantage when they join in spring semester, because if they joined in the fall, if they came to the university in the fall, they won't be able to participate in intake. So it would be better for them to try in the spring, because they would have the credits needed, or they would have the credits needed, and they would have the GPA needed according to what the host institution is looking for. And it's the same for headquarters too. They want your host GPA before you can join. So use that time as a transfer student to get your grades up, to get the minimum GPA requirement, and then participate in the spring. Now that we talked about the pros, let's talk about the cons. And for me, I'm a little biased because I do think that spring intake isn't as advantageous as it would be if you participated in the fall. I'll talk about the fall in my next video. But with spring, because it is so popular, I feel like it is a con. If you're in an organization and you're participating in intake, you have to compete with everyone for space, for days, for an audience, for an opportunity. I feel like, I personally think that it's a con to have intake in the spring because everyone has intake in the spring. That's the only issue that I have with that. The second thing that I believe to be a con with spring intake for my intake participants is that oftentimes your dues are due again. And a lot of people don't talk about that. So if you're joining an organization in the spring, say you have intake, and then you guys have your presentation in March, or I'm sorry, anywhere between March or May, let's say you do that. By the time the fiscal school year comes around again, which is typically July, August, your dues are due again. So you just paid this lump sum of money for your actual initiation fees, your dues, all this other stuff, probate materials. You paid all of that in the spring, between the time span of January to April, and then June through August, or July through August, your dues are due again. And I don't think that's an advantage. I think that kind of sucks, and it happened to me. That's why I'm saying it. When I joined my organization, we joined in the spring, and then by the time the school year started again in August, our dues were due again. And some organizations will allow a grace period for you to pay your stuff, but it's still going to be due. Like, if you want to be active, even though you just crossed, if you want to remain active, you have to pay your dues again. So I think that that's a con, and I think that's something that should be brought to your attention if you're interested in intake in the spring. You might have to scrape that money together. Some of you, not everybody, might have to scrape that money together for spring, and then by the time summer rolls around again, you have to scrape it up again. I think that's something worth mentioning. The third con that I think goes with spring intake would be the actual timeline itself. And I only say that because it's a longer timeline between spring than it is fall. With spring, you have any day between January to April or January to May to participate in intake, to be inducted, and to have your presentation. Some organizations have a timeline or have a set schedule for how and when you have to do things. So if you're an impatient person like me, and they tell you that you have this like 4-month span to get stuff done, you get over it pretty quickly. But it's also an advantage too, let me rewind, because if you're someone who wants to prepare for a probate or a neophyte presentation and you have a lot of people, it gives you guys enough time to get yourselves together in the spring. But also it could prolong your schedule in terms of the inductee wanting to be done with it and be out and celebrate. They might have to wait until a certain day before they're presented. They might have an induction, but have to wait until a certain day, be it 1-2 weeks later, before having their actual presentation and being like released to the campus. Lastly, the biggest con that I think goes with spring intake is you miss your Founders Day. Some people might not think about that. Some people might say, well, if I'm inducted in the spring, I'll have my Founders Day in January. But for those of you who, and a lot of, well, to be honest, the only people who have centennials left is my sorority and the Iotas. So we're the last sorority to do centennial. If you were a part of the organizations who were close to their centennials, centennial for those organizations are or were in January. So if you're participating in intake, if that's something that's important to you now when you're joining an organization, is you don't want to miss Founders Day, you're going to have to wait until the following year before celebrating your first Founders Day, because in the spring they start intake as soon as January, February, so you don't get to participate in that moment when the sororities and fraternities are celebrating their Founders Day in January. That's just for the January people. If you're in fall, like the Omegas, the SG-Ros, then you don't really have to worry about it. But just food for thought. And the Alphas are in December. So food for thought. I think that those are some pros and cons worth mentioning for anyone who is interested in joining an organization in the spring. I think it's good for you to weigh your options, and I want to present them to you guys. I hope that you guys found it informative. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you guys have any comments or questions, please put them down below. Please, please, please follow me on my Instagram. I'm close to getting 1,000 followers on Instagram, so if you guys are following me on YouTube, please follow me on Instagram as well. You're also welcome to follow me on my other channels or pages like Twitter and Facebook. Feel free to follow me on there. But if you guys found this video helpful, give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions for me, you already know what to do. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!